In addition to serving data in pages, Express also supports other HTTP verbs besides get that will let you actually modify data. And to show that, we have updated our username route here, and we've now got a res.render call that is going to pass in a user object and an address object. And we have updated our template so that we've got a nice little link back to the list of users. We've got the profile picture, which we're going to use the medium one now, and we've got a couple of links there, edit and delete. And then below that in our actual content, we've got a definition list, and in that list you'll see that we have two DD tags for each sort of aspect of the address, one that just displays the data and the other one that actually has an input tag in it. And essentially that's going to let us do some in-place editing. And so this is what our template looks like in the browser. And if we come back here and we actually look at our edit link, the edit link calls an edit function. And what the edit function does is it's going to show everything that has a class of edit and hide everything that has a class of view. And we've got a cancel function here that does just the opposite. So those two functions are what let us toggle between the in-place editing and just the regular view. So if we click on edit, we get the edit form. If we click cancel, it'll get rid of that form and just go back to displaying the data. Where we actually get into modifying data though is in this save function. So when we click on the save button, it's going to call this save function, and this is just going to call to the path that it matches our username that we're looking at now. And then the important part here is the method property, which is set to put. So that's going to do an HTTP put, and it's going to send this data back. And that's just, the value of all of those input fields that we have. And then finally, when that call returns, it's going to call this complete callback, which is going to cancel. It's going to call cancel, which is really just, getting rid of our edit form. And then it's going to reload the page so that we can see the new data loaded into the browser there. But so now if we go to our page and open the edit form and hit save, it's going to refresh. But if we look at the terminal here, we can see that we actually got some error output. And that's because we're not actually handling that put verb. And in order to handle it in a meaningful way, we actually need to go install something called body parser, which is going to let us do exactly what it sounds like and parse the body of the request. So we're going to require that package in here in our file. So we've got a property called body parser now, and we're going to configure our application to use it. So then we're going to say app.use bodyparser.url encoded, because our data is going to be URL encoded by the form by default. And then extended true is just telling it to do all the parsing that it can. And then we can come down here and actually define our put handler. So app.put this time instead of app.get, still using the same username mount path. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pull off that username like we have before. We're going to get that user's data using a little utility function that we've got in here. And then we're going to say user.location equals request.body. And so request.body is going to be this data object that's getting passed back from our form. And we're just going to set that onto our user object directly. And then we're going to call save user, which is essentially just going to rewrite that file back out. And then we're going to end the request by saying response.end. So now if we start our dev server back up, we can go back to the browser and we'll refresh this page and then go ahead and initiate an edit. And we will change Alan's address to be New York, California. And then we'll hit save. And you can see that the page did refresh there. And we can even, just to sort of show that it worked, we can go back to the users list, come back to Alan, and we see that he does have that address. And we can go look at our JSON file here and see that it was written out to that file. Now the last type of action we're going to implement here is a delete. And so we've got this delete link, which calls this function called del You always got to be careful about naming things delete on the client side because it's a reserved word. But this function is just going to, again, call the same username URL, but this time the method is going to be set to delete, and we don't need to send any data with it, but when that call is complete, we're just going to go back to the root path. So we're going to go back to our list of users. Now if we go back into our Express code, we can define an app.delete this time and give it that same username path. And this time we're just going to get the path to that user's file and delete that file. And then we're going to send back a 200 status, letting the client know that the request completed successfully. So now if we go here and click delete, it's going to take us back, but we still see Alan in the list there. And if we try and click on him, we're going to get an error because that file is not actually there. We can't load the data. And the reason for that is that we are loading this list of users when the application starts up. And then we're just, serving it from the root. And so there's no way for that data to be reloaded while the app is running. And so what we actually need to do is we'll go up and delete this code that runs at app startup. And right here within the root handler, we're just going to paste in some code that, will define our users array. We're going to read the users directory. So it's going to get all the files that actually are in that directory. We'll loop over the files, we'll read them in, and we'll parse out the data, set the full name that we have been using, push that user object back into our array, and then once we know that we have the right amount of users defined or loaded, then we'll go ahead and render that index page. And so now we can go back and refresh, and if we go into Daryl here and say delete, it takes us back to that list, and you can see Daryl is in fact missing from the list.